Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you again and to be joining you for my part two of my conversation with Kara Francis, who is a marriage and divorce coach. Kara, could you just take a moment to introduce yourself and your work in case someone might not be familiar with you?
Sure. Yes. So I'm Kara. I am a former divorce attorney turned marriage and divorce coach. So I support people who are at a major crossroads in their romantic relationship, whether that is entering marriage or processing the decision of whether they want to stay married or move forward with divorce. So I do that through one-to-one coaching. I'm also in the process of building out a community or two. That's sort of behind the scenes peek, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm in Manhattan. I've been personally married, divorced, recently remarried, and have two fur babies, and just living it up in New York City.
Awesome. Love that. And for those of you who might not be familiar with myself, I am Maria Natapov. I am a BH2O certified co-parenting coach and step parenting coach. And I support, similarly to Kara, but a little different, basically families going through transitions, whether there's really focusing on reducing conflict and creating a foundation for effective communication, respect, and creating really an environment where everybody feels seen and supported to thrive, kind of in a nutshell. So I work with maybe it's parents going through conflict who are like, yep, we need a better system. Perhaps it's a couple who's not sure whether or not they're going to get divorced, but again, they want to ensure well being for their kids and that they have workability for that part of whatever it looks like to move forward. And of course, transitioning through divorce and post divorce, and even building a second family, which may include another partner and perhaps even children that that partner might bring into the mix. So, sort of a whole gamut. So, similar, a little different focus. And I'm really excited to speak today about the concept and topic of blending families. I think that we often talk about blending, but really it isn't ever a true blend, and what that can look like for each situation, even if on paper it seems identical, is entirely different for a variety of reasons. But essentially, circumstances around how and why the particular situation you're finding yourself in might still be different, including personalities are different, people's capacity is different, people's needs are different. So all of that requires that individualization and consideration when creating and building something new. And I think it's interesting what came to mind as kind of a first step to all of this that I think is a precursor is, are we inviting the person into the conversation with us and into the collaboration with us? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Kara.
Yeah. So when you say the other person, do you mean the non-bio parent or the bio parent? Who are we
I
talking about?
think honestly, all of the above, right? It depends which perspective we're taking. So, from the perspective of the bio parent who's bringing in a new partner, yeah, are we inviting that individual in? Are we inviting our children in? From the perspective of the step parent, yeah, are we collaborating with our partner and inviting them into whatever we might be feeling that is a need, or perhaps our vision for how this looks going forward, or what we're hoping for? Again, are we inviting their children to come along with us, right? Because ultimately, this isn't about being a second parent to them. In many cases, that's not available and will never be, and that's fine. But nonetheless, it is about cohabitating, and it's certainly about, they're going to be around each other likely one way or another to some degree. So it is really about building that bond and that consideration. And to me, it really boils down to respect and meeting somebody where they're at, and hopefully being open to growing that relationship, that bond, whatever that could look like. However, not putting pressure. That's really key. And especially when it comes to the adults putting pressure on the children, you'd be surprised how easily they perceive things as pressure. So
Mm.
really going out of your way to ensure that you're not in any way suggesting that, and really maybe checking like, hey, does this feel like pressure? I want to make sure we're clear that that's not what's happening here. But I am interested in hearing maybe some of what's hard for you, or what you're needing, or what you're experiencing through all of this.
Yeah. So I think, and you sort of hit on this at the very beginning, but this idea of blending families, right? And I think the term blended in and of itself can carry certain connotations
Yeah.
of we have to be like the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And thankfully for the Brady Bunch, neither of their other bio parents were in the picture. So, of course, it worked out perfectly. Um, but I think the word blended, even in and of itself, carries this connotation of we have to be all hunky dory, we have to be in this together and all just like sort of coexisting together, and everything's got to be copacetic. And that carries a pressure with it if it doesn't work that way. Because, like you said, we have to accept people where they're at, and that includes all of the adults and all of the children involved. We can't force something that doesn't feel organic or authentic just for the sake of feeling like we've successfully created a blended family. It might be more of a parallel family
Mhm.
situation, right? It really is so dependent on your specific situation. So just like creating a happy marriage or confidently navigating divorce, there is no one size fits all approach to creating this new family structure. And I think once we sort of acknowledge that, it helps just let some steam out of the kettle that there's not a certain standard that we have to meet in order to be good, or in order to not fail, right?
Yeah.
The only rule or guideline is make sure that it's a healthy, functioning relationship for everybody. And that could look like anything. So I think those are my initial thoughts as far as on this topic of not forcing something just to meet some sort of preconceived notion or what we see in TV or in movies about what a blended family should look like.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I completely agree with you. And it's funny because you said, well, of course, their bio parents weren't in the picture, so it's much easier. But I have to say that even if they are out of the picture, it's still an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
Very rarely it may be attainable, perhaps after a lot of work and usually many years. But in most cases, it never will be. And I think that's fine. And I think it's recognizing that type of conditioning that we have seen in different forms of media, although very well intentioned, I think is really key because it does set us up for unrealistic expectations. And then it kind of exacerbates the challenges that are already inherently a part of this process for many. So,
Yeah.
sort of, fact check yourself and be like, I don't know, like, is this really realistic? Just put yourself maybe for a moment in those people's shoes, and again, just, I don't know, maybe that's a little unfair, but ultimately, right, really checking in with your gut and your intuition. And um, I know we've talked about this last time, but this is another reason why it's so valuable to connect to professionals who can orient you in a more realistic way about what this experience can really look like. And I know I said this before, and maybe this is another opportunity to iterate with a more clear example. This is why, even before you might consider dating somebody with children, you might want to connect with a professional, because you are thinking of investing your time and energy into that relationship. And I think it's really valuable when you walk into it eyes wide open and know exactly what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of times something like the Brady Bunch or something along those lines is really not ever going to be achievable. And it's not because of anybody else's fault or anything like that. It's just that these dynamics are extremely complicated. Usually somebody has suffered a massive loss, either due to a parent dying or partner dying, or separation or divorce. All of those scenarios are extremely painful. So that doesn't just live in a bubble in the past. That gets
Mhm.
carried with us forward. So I think it's just something really important to think about and recognize.
Yeah, it's never too early to seek support around this, no matter what your role is in the
Yes,
situation, or to seek support for your kids if they're not
absolutely.
old enough yet to get that for themselves. I mean, navigating this situation with adult children, I feel like, is a completely different webinar. So we'll assume the children are minors in this sort of for purposes of this discussion.
I
Um,
would like to, for one moment, just take a brief sidestep because you brought up getting support for your children. And one caveat I would like to draw attention to is sometimes in these situations we feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get my kids a therapist and they'll be fine.
mhm,
And the reality is, a therapist is a support and a tool, but it is in addition to the critical role you as a parent play. It is
yeah.
not a substitute for your engagement and your involvement and you taking the lead very actively to navigate this on your child's behalf.
Hmm.
There's many reasons for that, but one couple of very key ones is this person, no matter how skilled and intuitive they are, they don't know your child. They don't know all the ins and outs of what they've been through, their personality, their needs, who they are, and you as a parent do know those things, but on top of it, you have the trust, you have the rapport.
Hmm.
Even in some of the worst situations, you still, kids put their parents on a pedestal and they are also physiologically, in addition to emotionally wired to want their parents a connection to them, their affirmation, their approval. So that gives you leverage that another individual just will not have. So I
Yeah.
just want to really highlight that. I think it's key and sometimes gets missed.
Yeah, that's a really important point to make, that it's not just sort of I'm fobbing off this challenge or this problem on another professional and then I'm good, right?
Yeah.
And my kid will come back to me and everything will be great. um there Yeah, you have to have the follow through as a parent. um One, like, staying on sort of this path, one question I have for you is, what about kids who don't have maybe that open dialogue with their parents? So for example, me growing up in the Midwest, we're not big we're not big on talking about our feelings, right? Let's just call it what it is, right? It's very difficult, and it's still difficult for me sometimes to share my feelings with my parents today.
Yeah.
So in that sort of situation where it's not that it's an unhealthy or dangerous parent-child relationship, but it's a situation where maybe the parent doesn't have all of the insights into their child because their child internalizes a lot and isn't super open about how they're feeling, what they're struggling with. How does that sort of impact the layout of this situation and navigating this transition?
It does make it significantly harder
Yeah.
because, to your point, the child is already, first of all, just being a child, I think today is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Just in the best of parenting scenarios, most stable, loving home, it's just hard to be a kid these days, period.
Yeah.
And I think when there is a situation like a separation or divorce, or perhaps one of the parents then finding a new partner and starting that process of building their second family, etc., it adds a lot of pressure, right? Last time we spoke about how there are loyalty binds, and the child feels oftentimes like their head is on the chopping block.
Hmm.
So now, if they're already used to internalizing some of the typical challenges, these become additional weight that they're having to conceal and carry all by themselves.
Hmm.
A lot of times that will reveal itself one way or another, unfortunately, but you really don't want to wait because it may be too late, right? Like a lot of times when that starts to manifest in other ways, it's never too late, but it is too
It's
late.
harder to reel it back.
Yeah, much harder. And then
Yeah.
already other kind of things are happening in the body and in the brain. And yeah, it's a lot to navigate. So my suggestion and advice would simply be, thankfully, there are a lot of resources available. There are professionals, there are additional resources, there's online classes, there's books, there's ways you can start this process. And typically, the more the parent is open to creating shifts in their own understanding, perhaps their own development of these skills, the more their
Mhm.
children will follow suit and also will feel like it is safer for them to open up because they'll find that their parents have the tools to deal with it, essentially. One key
Yeah.
thing, just to kind of really maybe put a period on this, for example, if you're going to be squirmy when your child comes to you with something major or sort of introducing a topic, and as soon as you hear it, you bristle,
Mm-hmm.
you have a verbal, loud response or not, but just your energy of bristling will instantly send the message to them that it's not okay to talk about these things and that basically
Yeah.
they're being rejected. It's not a safe space and they will never try again until,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and it's not enough to just say, hey, my door's always open. And my kids know that. I hear that often. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to get them to come talk to you. That's just not, it doesn't cut the mustard, unfortunately. We
Yeah.
really have to go out of our way to create a space and learn these skills so that we can demonstrate that. And only through that are we also teaching our kids how to be more open and how to arrive to this kind of a conversation, how to bring up difficult topics, how to navigate a challenging conversation, perhaps about values, perhaps about what is and is not okay, and why. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not because I said so. I used to get that a lot as a kid. I hated it. I
Or as
loathed
I
it.
say, not as I do.
Absolutely. I just felt so completely like shut down and overlooked, right? Like it just feels
Yeah.
horrible, and there's nowhere to put that. And um, a lot of kids will, in those instances, sadly turn to not very helpful supports. They'll turn to their
Yeah.
peers who don't know much and just want to be supportive and may give them terrible advice. And so all of that is to say those things are preventable, but you have to have the courage to walk it first. And
Yeah.
that's probably why, like we always say again, reach out to those supports because that's what's at stake. But unfortunately, there's a lot of cases, sadly, that lead to estrangement around some of this.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are not able to, they don't have the language. They often don't even necessarily have the insight to identify what's going on for them that's challenging or very upsetting and hurtful. And then
Mm-hmm.
with age, they develop the language to identify it and talk about it. And by that time, they make up their mind and they're like, I'm all set with this relationship, which is heartbreaking and doesn't need to be. But again, that's really what's at stake is potentially your relationship with your child. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why hopefully that is incentive enough to
Yeah.
consider perhaps, yes, nobody likes challenges. Our brain is wired to resist change, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so powerful when we show our kids that we can be a beginner at something, when we show our kids that we can go and we can learn, right? We're always telling them, go learn, go study, go this, go that. Well, it shouldn't end for us, right? We need to model that we also prioritize learning. We also prioritize self-development and leadership if we want them to have those skills as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we said before, the blueprint for how they navigate life comes from how they watch us interact with life and do life. So, yeah, it's just really, really key to be open to finding new ways of doing things, even when it's hard. And that's actually a beautiful way to invite them to the conversation and say, look, I never did this with my parents. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to do this with you. Can we
Yeah.
please do this together and you can help me be effective at it? We can learn this skill together. Like that's,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I'm getting a little emotional actually, because that's one of the most beautiful, amazing things you can model for them and invite them to.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're relating to them on a human level, right? Not
Exactly.
just parent child, but like I'm not perfect either, and I'm trying to learn and grow. And when, especially, when they're children and their brains are still developing, that is really a critical time to instill these sorts of lessons in them, that there is no such thing as perfection, and we're always learning and growing, and it's okay to mess up and make
Yeah.
mistakes. This is a safe place to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And how else are they going to learn that if they don't see you doing it?
Yeah.
I
I
think that's
also,
sage advice, not just for today's topic, but like just
yeah.
general parenting, right? And like in a traditional nuclear family.
Absolutely. And you know, the other piece to that is like, it's okay to have this feel uncomfortable and awkward, right? It's okay to
Yes.
stumble through because like it's okay to do hard things and it's okay to not be good at it and
Yeah.
that it's still valuable and
Yeah.
that we can fail forward, we can get there together.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of this too is just as parents or as the adults in this situation of blending families is keeping your ego in check.
Yes, huge.
Like everyone has something to learn always, not just in this particular situation. We're never done learning.
Right.
And in this particular situation where it's very emotional, we're dealing with not only the parent-child relationship, but the relationship between the two bio parents and the breakdown of their marriage and relationship and the life that they created together. And then you've got this
Yeah.
potentially new partner or two new partners coming into the picture and trying to integrate all of that. Um, Keeping your ego in check and realizing, oh, just almost like accepting, like, I don't know what I'm doing here, and that's okay. And we're going to figure it out. And
Yes.
not just being so black and white thinking about it of, well, this is how we have to do it. And not being open to feedback or open to trying to view things from different perspectives. And that's really even just a general quality of, like, if I'm interviewing a client and they don't, and I don't get that vibe from them that they are willing to try things differently and look at things from different angles and not be so dogmatic
Mhm.
about everything, like that's a red flag to me, and I won't take that client on because I'm not going to be able to serve you, and
Mhm.
you know, this is just going to be a waste of time. So yeah, I'm curious from, like, since we spent some time talking about the parent-child dynamic, sort of
Mhm.
maybe switching gears and focusing on the adults and this dynamic, like your initial thoughts on that and what you've seen in your practice. And you mentioned there's been some estrangement issues, which I've also I've professionally seen. So curious to hear your thoughts off the bat
Yeah,
on that.
just I think sometimes, you know, I'm sure you see this a lot. Sometimes people do things to keep the peace, or they think, oh, I don't need to involve my kids because they don't know. But the reality is, no, they're picking up everything.
Yeah.
So, including, there's people I've spoken with who are like, yeah, we have a very happy marriage on the outside, but very much like it is a surface thing. And now I'm realizing probably the whole relationship has been that way. And, you know, kids pick up on that. And again, is that really the future you want them living into? Do you want
Hmm.
them to feel unfulfilled and like, oh yeah, from the outside everything looks great. We seemingly get along, we have family dinners together, we do all the things, right? But we don't have a real connection. We don't have a partner who really sees us, who really supports us, goes to bat for us, right? Calls us out on our stuff. Like, I mean, in a sense, sometimes it's funny. I feel like I've been talking about this quite a bit recently, but when we lean into conflict, it's beautiful. It allows us to have genuine, authentic relationships and build a much closer bond.
Hmm.
So I think sometimes it's a little bit of a delusion of what it has to look like when it's just not working. But all I can tell you is if you feel like you're the sacrificial lamb and you're doing this for the kids and
The
that's your
martyr.
reason,
Call it the martyr syndrome.
yeah, oh, that's right. Yes. I would just say don't because they know.
Yeah.
And if you were to be honest, if you're feeling unfulfilled and unsatisfied and you know you want out, then give them the gift of seeing what it looks like to be courageous and honor your needs and your truth and give yourself a chance to build something so that they're seeing you do it, but also so that they feel like, wow, I deserve to be happy and I get to be courageous in my own life as I navigate similar things or similar challenges perhaps or similar realizations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a question that I ask my clients often, which is, and it seems very just like, well, like an obvious question,
Yeah.
but one that I don't think that they truly confront because again,
Yes.
they're trying to avoid it, which is, how would you feel if your child was in this type of relationship and they came to you
Exactly.
and said that they were feeling this way? What would you say to them? And would you
Yeah.
want them to stay in that relationship, or would you
Yeah.
support them in making changes to that relationship, whether it's trying to repair and reinvest or moving forward with ending the relationship? And so, yeah, the modeling is just so important
Yeah.
because parents at the end of the day are humans. They're just humans that are at a different stage in their life of their kids, right? And so it's like so important to get back to that human
Yes.
level.
Absolutely. And the
Yeah.
other thing that I also see is sometimes, for whatever reason, one of the parents, after the separation, and then there's a step parent in the picture, they'll just let the step parent handle certain things with the kids, and kind of take lead. Maybe it has to do with
Mm,
scheduling or household chores or expectations around homework or, whatever. Or perhaps the discipline, right? It depends on who the parent is and what their role was. But what's really key to remember and recognize is that the bio parent really is the glue, and they have to remain as such. It's not a situation that you can hand off certain responsibilities, even if you'd like to, and even if you feel like your partner could handle it or possibly even do a better job with it. Because again, the rapport, as we mentioned before, is so key. It really is the be all and end all. And they the child doesn't want to feel like, wow, there's a new boss in the house, like what's going on, or there's too many cooks in the kitchen, or who is this person, they're totally taking over. They're just not going to listen, and they're going to be resentful, and then they're probably going to feel betrayed and resentful of you as well for allowing it to happen. What they're looking for, including sometimes when they're exhibiting behaviors around this, is they need their bio parent in the household to step up and kind of run the show, because that's where the relationship is. And you might feel like, oh, they're just going through a hard time, they need more slack. But in fact, boundaries create security and they create peace for the child, because they're a child, they can't do that for themselves yet. So, and yes, you can definitely work with them on creating a plan and kind of testing it out. What can they handle, what can't they handle, and increasing responsibility and autonomy. But it's got to be gradual, and it still has to critically involve the bio parent's involvement. They have to take the lead on that. That is not something that can just be passed off to a step parent. And it jeopardizes the relationship, not only your own with your child, but also the relationship with that step parent. If you ever want them to get along or have a possibility of getting along, you can't put them in that role.
yeah. Yeah. I love this whole line that you're going down, which is it's not a cut and paste
Yeah.
situation, right? You're not cutting like a Word doc. You're not cutting your first spouse out and then pasting a new spouse in their place. That's
No.
just not how it works. It's not going to work well for your kids. And it's also, I've had so many clients who either are currently navigating divorce or are post divorce and feel like they were just like replaced entirely.
Yeah.
And that negatively impacts the ongoing co-parenting relationship because they feel disrespected and they feel like, well, you and I built and created this life together, literally created these children together or adopted them or what have you. Like we built this together. And now I'm just sort of like tossed to the side. Like
Yeah.
that's not going to like help the situation as much as you may want to cut ties with your ex. When you have kids together, you got to be realistic and you have to be cognizant of the fact that the more you try to just completely cut them out and like silo them to the side, the more problems and stress it's going to create for you and your kids. And so it's not going to work. And I also love to view divorce as an opportunity to just, get clear on, okay, what do I want to leave behind and what do I want to bring with me going forward, right? And so perhaps if the original family structure was a scenario where one parent did XYZ and one parent only did ABC, how can we this time around learn from that and grow from that? And how can we become more integrated and more cohesive and not have such strong areas of like you do this and I do that, right? And that's not to say everyone has to do everything, but like how can we not just for the sake of our kids, but for the sake of this new relationship with this
Yeah,
person.
absolutely. I love that you said that. And, to your point, the stronger your relationship is, and it doesn't look, if the cost of conflict is too high, that's a big thing that we talk about a lot in the BH2O program, then you don't need to be speaking to each other or at the same events at the same time with your former spouse, with your kids, bio parent, other bio
Mhm.
parent. However, you do need a system for workability. You do
Yeah.
need to regularly have a way to exchange information that is relevant and important having to do with your kids. And you have to have a way of making collaborative decisions together having to do with your kids. And to your point, the more that you prioritize that, the more security your children will have, the more security because there is workability with your co-parent, your new relationship will have, because it will no longer be impacted and kind of, the waters won't be dirtied by all of this stuff floating around that nobody's dealing
Yeah.
with, that's unsaid, that's kind of just penetrating the space, right? Like things will be clear, there will be delineated ways to communicate, and roles will be clear, and there will actually be freedom to create peace and joy and enjoy each other's company. But it actually, to your point, Kara, when you don't confront what there is to address, when you put your head in the sand, that's really where problems arise. And oftentimes you will likely recreate the same, whatever didn't work the first time around,
Yeah.
in your second relationship, because as you said, you can't just, it's not just about cutting and pasting. It likely wasn't just the person that may have been a piece of it, but it was these patterns of ways of communicating, ways of existing, ways of being together that also was causing many of the challenges. So you've got to clean that up and get very clear on what that was. So I really love when you say identify what worked, what didn't work, and decide what you get to take forward and what you get to leave behind. And a lot of times it is about taking a long, hard look in the mirror and getting brutally honest with ourselves. But here's the beautiful thing, it's such a gift, right? Just like what we were talking about before with being open to learning new ways of communicating with our kids and how can we bring them into the conversation. When we are open to identifying, wow, I have these amazing strengths and these areas I'm not particularly strong in, but I'm committed to finding ways to strengthen these particular skills. What an incredible opportunity we're modeling for our children. You know, that again, growth is a forever endeavor, and you can always change whatever it is that isn't working in your life, be it again a lack of perhaps skill or anything else. Essentially, you get to create what you want and you get to
Yeah.
create yourself as you want to be. You don't have to wait for some, magic, I don't know, fairy to come and make everything okay or change the other person or change the circumstance. You get to be the leader in creating that new future. And I think
Yeah.
that's the most powerful gift and lesson that we can impart on our kids, but it starts with us leading by example.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I am picturing somebody who's maybe navigating the either navigating divorce now or is post divorce, and one or both of them has new partners and they're trying to figure this situation out and they're listening to us talk about this. And I can imagine them saying, this all sounds great, but my co-parent is not open or willing to doing any of this, right? So if you're dealing with someone who's very high conflict, is not
Mhm.
accountable, is not self-aware or self-reflective, not willing to grow and change, right? What do you recommend there? I can imagine the boundaries become that much more important, right? But I'm just curious for your thoughts there since you've trained so much in this area.
So actually, that's exactly why BH2O framework is so magical, is because it only takes one co-parent to lean in. So whether or
Yeah.
not the other co-parent joins you in doing the work and is like spitting at the ceiling and twiddling their thumbs, not paying attention whatsoever, or whether they refuse to even join you. They're like, you know what, you do this. I don't need this. I'm good. Everything's perfectly fine. I have no issues. This is your problem. Regardless, you, by living into the framework of this program, because we're focusing on your values that you want to instill in your children. We're focusing on identifying the root of your triggers and how what you need in that moment to shift out of the trigger and the reactivity and ground yourself into recommitting to your values, recentering on your child's needs, and being your best self in that moment. And it is possible. It is not just a fad. It is not just, these are pretty words. It is possible. It takes consistent action. It takes building a foundation. It takes support, but it is achievable. It is doable, and you can do it. And right when you start to shift into that way of existing, and there's so much more, and you really understand the impact on your child from what happens when this doesn't exist, and when they are caught in the middle, even in the tiniest of ways. Right, in this program we explore specific vignettes, and it's mind-blowing when we realize the deep impact on kids from seemingly small things, right, the everyday ordinary little moments. And when we really get the whole world of that, and also our role in it, and how powerfully we can shift away from how we've been doing things and really step into clarity, purposeful, a purposeful way to move forward and where we're going with intention, and again with being regulated and being confident, and yes, absolutely boundaries as well. It is incredible what is possible. But again, we have to have the courage, and we have to identify, yeah, this is what we need. And we have to take that first step of, committing to walking that path. But it really does, like, you don't need to wait for your co-parent. You don't need to wait for circumstances. You get to feel satisfied now and show up as your best self, and then show your kids that that is available to them as well.
Yeah. I, that's really great to hear. And I can imagine that that would help alleviate stress and anxiety for a lot of co-parents who are out there who feel like it's futile. No matter how hard I try, I'm never going to get this other parent on board. And it kind of reminds me of what I say often to clients, which is it takes two people to get married, but it takes only one person to end the marriage. And I feel like there's a parallel here to, sure, it'd be great if both parents were on board with this approach and we're like all running on all cylinders together. But even one parent who is showing up and taking accountability and putting in the work can create a huge change and impact for the good on their child's lives. And I can imagine that that helps sort of reduce the overwhelm, reduce the limiting beliefs of, this is pointless because the other parent's not going to play ball, and just sort of be more empowering to co-parents out there who are struggling with maybe a higher conflict or just a completely checked out parent on the other side. So I know we're sort of getting close to time. I mean, I could talk forever, but I also have a call at 3. So I want to make sure we're like wrapping this up in a great way. But I would love it if you could maybe share a little bit more on the system and the process that you've been sort of talking about, like logistically, how it works, how parents can learn more and get involved with it, because I think it could be a real big game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the best way to learn more is reach out, and let's do a call, and we can explore together where you're at and what exactly you are dealing with, your specific situation, your specific needs, and what this kind of support could do for you. But essentially, the program is typically a 16-week program. If it was, a co-parenting couple working with me privately, we would work individually, again, well, jointly, I would say, for 16 weeks. And there's a very structured curriculum that we go through, because we're building a foundation so that at the end of it, you guys have your 2-page co-parenting plan, and you are autonomous, meaning that you're not dependent on myself or another third party to navigate your disagreements or decisions around your kids, which is what so often happens, unfortunately. So this gives you a system that you are creating yourself, and I'm just there to guide you and support you to ensure you get to your goals. But so it is not prescriptive. It is very much, driven and led by you and what's important to you. And it grows with you, so that it supports you not only through the time of this work with me, but beyond, right? Because since it's grounded in the values, it's something that can expand, can evolve as your child grows, as perhaps your co-parenting dynamic and relationship grows too, right? Time can do all kinds of things, especially when we have really good systems and structures in place that we feel supported by. Um, so yeah, so I would just suggest, if you're interested in learning more and learning the specifics, reach out to me at maria@synergisticstepparenting.com, and or find me on LinkedIn or Facebook and DM me, and we can set up a call. And I think that would probably be the most effective way to learn more.
Yeah. I love this. I love how it sounds like, it's 16 weeks, right? That's a commitment. That's um intentional work that you're putting in, and you're walking away, like you said, with like a 2-page plan that sort of like consolidates everything and sets you up for success and continued growth, right? Because we're never
Yeah.
done. But that can sort of help it, like, it sounds like it allows for that really deep work, but then also sort of wraps everything up together. So like from a logistical, practical perspective, you're walking away with a game plan. And as someone who used to practice full time as an attorney, I can tell you that this is unlike anything I saw, because when I was practicing, the parties were required to take like an online parenting course, and it was probably like maybe a few hours, and it was very much a check the box. I heard a lot of clients being like, I don't need this, I know what I'm doing. That goes back to checking your ego at the door, right? So that's just an aside, but like, not very limited time from my perspective as the attorney
Mhm.
would go into preparing for this next chapter of post-divorce co-parenting. And it very much felt like a check the box sort of thing. And so this sounds like it's much more intentional and something that can be customized for each unique family, and just so much more meaningful. So yeah, for all of you out there, or if you know people who are, if you're personally in this situation, or you know someone who is, like, this is just an amazing resource to lean into, and I would highly recommend reaching out to Maria and talking more about it.
Thank you so much, Kara. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think this program is also another piece that I really love is it is so accessible to a multitude of users, meaning some of us are auditory processors, some are visual learners, some have to kind of do a hands-on approach, and this encompasses all of that. So that's another thing that I personally love. There's no like me talking at you, like we are engaged. This is
Yeah.
and you're telling me the whole time what's working, what's not working. So we're tweaking as we go from that perspective. But yeah, it's very comprehensive, and we really start. You're not necessarily going to instantly feel. We're not putting out fires here. We're truly
Yeah,
building a foundation that bridges us to a brighter future,
it's a
one
long
that
game.
feels good. Yeah, it really is. And the reason it's so long is because it takes 66 days to build new habits. And that's a lot of what we're doing here. We're building new mindset habits. We're building new habits that are skill based, utilizing new skills. And yeah, we're building a whole plan, a whole system, um, that an operating system really for
Yeah,
your relationship. So it doesn't require, this is not about healing wounds from the past, or we got to sort our stuff. Like you could do that in therapy if you
yeah,
choose. That
yeah,
is not what this is. This is really about creating a way to move forward.
yeah. I love that. I love that, kind of like a new standard operating procedure,
Exactly.
which
Exactly what it is.
is really what a lot of people need, are
Yeah.
those systems and ground rules and boundaries and just clear guidelines, because people are always just wondering, I don't know what to do. Like, I just need guidance here. And this sounds like it's a beautiful form of guidance, but also you create your plan, right? Like, you create it for what works best for you. So it's like a good combination of the autonomy and making sure it aligns with your unique situation, but also getting that professional guidance and insight. So
Yeah.
it's fabulous. Yes, everyone reach out to Maria about this, because it's very special.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh,
Well, I really appreciate your time and the amazing work that you do. And for those who are newly engaged perhaps, or are going to be getting married soon, or are recently married, could you share your awesome offering that you have as well? Or
Yes, thank you for asking. Yes, so I offer a program called Modern Marriage Design. And this is, as Maria said, for people who are engaged to be married or recently married. And it's really set up and designed to help you lay that solid foundation for your marriage from a place of like starting with self-reflection and self-discovery and getting really clear on who you are as an individual and how you want to integrate that into your life as a future married couple. So many of my divorce coaching clients who I've worked with over the years, I've heard so many times them say, I don't know who I am. I've lost myself. I'm not
Mhm.
even romantically interested in this person anymore. And so it's all of that is due to sort of approaching the wedding and the marriage as more of a check the box sort of situation, as opposed to really intentionally preparing for this big transition, similar to preparing for the transition that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
And so it's not a quick fix, and it's about going really deep and maybe challenging some limiting beliefs that you have about marriage and married life and what
Yeah.
it should look like versus what you actually want it to look like. Designing roles and responsibilities. So, getting into literally the day to day stuff of how your life will operate in this new phase of life. And learning how to express your needs. And, like Maria mentioned, lean into healthy conflict as an opportunity to grow and change. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's not what you traditionally see. It's not the pastor led program. It's led by me. So it's a newer, modern way of approaching it. But I'm a firm believer that if things haven't historically worked, it's time to change them and approach them in a different way. So yeah, that's just a little bit more about it.
I absolutely love that because I know intentional living is a thing that is kind of bigger now, and people are more aware and conscious, right? Really bringing a conscious intentional quality to choices they're making, decisions they're navigating, etc. We hear even conscious parenting, things like that. And I think this is so critical, right? Because when do you really consider who you want to be and what kind of future you want to build with somebody for your marriage? I mean, I haven't heard of anything like that. So I think it's absolutely brilliant to create a safe container and space among others who are navigating the same type of pending life event and transition, who want to build it on purpose, which actually really beautifully aligns with BH2O as well, methodology.
Yeah.
And who really want to have those difficult conversations because this is your life we're talking about, and you deserve it, and so does your partner. You deserve to consider and get clarity around how to make that shift in a way that feels really good and create something by your own design, not just by default or what society tells you, or the limitations that you might perceive are available. But then you probably go to a program like this and you realize, wow, the world is our oyster. We really get to create whatever we want. And how
Yeah.
liberating and beautiful is that as you're about to enter your union? So just that sounds amazing. I'm so excited that this offering exists.
Thank
Definitely
you.
reach out to Cara to explore more and join.
Thank you. Yeah, for those of you who are maybe preparing for your second marriage,
Yeah.
this could, and you have kids or there are children involved, like
Yeah.
pairing my support with Maria's support, like you're setting yourself up for success. Like, come on.
Absolutely.
And so it's just a good example of how like different professionals can really integrate together and really support you in laying that foundation for your next chapter and sort of getting you off to a really great start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, Maria, this was so fun. I mean, like I said, I could talk forever, but
yeah.
alas, scheduling. So we would love to hear your thoughts either in the comments or reach out directly to Maria and I. And let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the beautiful work that you do and for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, everybody.